Well, today is Wednesday, August 19th, and the video today was going to be a little bit different than I've done in the past, and that's because we had the opportunity yesterday to speak to our entire staff of the Rockford Public Schools, and our 3 assistant superintendents plus I gave presentations regarding how the school district is going to open on August 24th and how we're going to provide teaching and learning for our students for the first 12 days, and then what will happen on September 14th when students actually come back into the classroom for those that choose to do so, and also the continuation of our online virtual program as well. This tape that you're going to watch today, and hopefully for several days, is 55 minutes long because it's very detailed, but it's a presentation that I believe you'll learn much from. The information that will be presented is actually included in that 52-page document that you have on our Return to Learn program, and also on the condensed version as well. But you'll be actually have the opportunity to hear people, watch people speak about these, read the re-entry into the Rockford Public Schools teaching and learning program. So what I might suggest, instead of watching it for the full 55 minutes, you may want to take it in segments and watch it for 15 minutes and then come back to it and so forth. It's up to you, obviously, but I think this will give you a clearer picture of what we're doing and may answer many of your questions that you may have developed following reading the material. So I look forward to hearing what you have to say about this opportunity to watch this video, and I hope you take advantage of it, and I will see you next Wednesday. Have a good week.
Good morning, Rockford Public Schools. Welcome back to the 2021 school year. I'm Corey Wilson Crawford, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources here at Rockford Schools, and I have the honor of welcoming you back on behalf of Dr. Scheibler's cabinet and setting the expectation for what our day is going to look like today. First, I'd just like to explain what is going to happen in our video today. You'll see several different people come before you, and we all have a message to give to you. We're going to be talking with you today about the culture of collaboration that we're actively building together. We're also going to highlight some equity and inclusion initiatives that Rockford Public Schools has engaged in and will continue to engage in. We'll also be talking with you today about our PLC launch, instructional priorities that we have, the August 18th and 19th PD schedule, COVID safety protocols, the bond work that we have been engaging in since we have last seen you in March, and finally we'll hear a message from Dr. Scheibler and his vision for Rockford Public Schools for 2021 and going forward. I'd like to start by highlighting our core values and our collective commitments. The core values and collective commitments at Rockford Public Schools were developed through a process of engagement with our staff. We went through this process during the last school year, where we asked our staff members to give us some information about their individual value systems and how that relates to their work in education. Together, we developed the core values of Rockford Public Schools, which include student-centered action, respect, collaboration, and transparency. As a district and every employee in our district, we hope that you can follow these core values and define them for yourself in your work with colleagues and in your work with students. We also developed collective commitments from those core values. The collective commitments are the guiding principles for Rockford Schools and what we will do when we have decisions that we need to make, when we think about student achievement, when we think about interactions with each other. We will use these collective commitments in all of our decision-making processes. The collective commitments for Rockford Schools are: we will take collective responsibility for the success of every student. We will model the behaviors that we expect of our students that include respect, inclusion, positive interactions, and lifelong learning. We will hold ourselves accountable to a collaborative process that develops each student's potential using evidence-based strategies. We will act with integrity and transparency in our communications and interactions with each other and also with our stakeholders. And we will also recognize that productive discourse, which includes competing ideas, is an essential byproduct of a successful commitment to student learning. Over the next month, you'll have an opportunity to develop what these collective commitments look like in adult behavior in our school system with your building principal. You'll be unpacking these collective commitments, much like you unpacked priority standards over the last 2 years. And at the end of it, we'll have a set of norms that we'll use when we interact together and when we interact with students that embody both our core values and our collective commitments to student achievement. Part of that culture of collaboration is really focusing on the 7 norms of collaboration from Adaptive Schools and using those norms in our interactions. You can see those norms up on the screen. Those norms are promoting a spirit of inquiry when we're working with each other, using pausing to allow for active listening, paraphrasing to value the ideas and opinions of others, probing for specificity to make sure that you're coming from a place of understanding rather than a place of reaction. Putting ideas on the table to ensure that all voices are heard for the best product possible. Paying attention to yourself and others in social situations and in work meetings. And presuming positive intentions. We know that every staff member that comes to Rockford Public Schools to work every day has the best intentions for students and for each other. And we need to acknowledge that together as we continue to build a culture of collaboration. The Rockford Public Schools Diversity and Inclusion Committee has been meeting for the last 2 years on specific initiatives to help increase our awareness and diversity here at Rockford Schools. On the screen, you'll see our Diversity and Inclusion Committee statement. That value statement is as follows. The Rockford Public Schools strives to be an inclusive community for all. Our philosophy is to draw strengths from our differences and our similarities in order to do the following. Foster an inclusive environment for all students and staff. To promote respect and acceptance toward all persons. To educate and bring awareness around differences within our school community and our greater community, and also to prepare our students to be active members of a diverse and inclusive society, both now and in the future. We believe that everyone in the Rockford Public School District has a right to feel respected, safe, and valued. And you can do your part as an employee to ensure that happens with both your colleagues and the students that you serve. As a district, we've made some strides in this area. One of the things we've done is partner with a Cultural Intelligence Center to provide cultural awareness training for all of our administrators. In the upcoming school year, you will have the opportunity as a staff member to participate in cultural awareness and implicit bias professional development as you develop in the area of creating and fostering an inclusive community for all students, including those from historically marginalized groups. More information to come on that as our Diversity and Inclusion Committee continues to do the work of ensuring that all voices at Rockford Public Schools are heard. With that, it is my pleasure to be able to turn the mic over to Mike Ram, who will begin to talk with you about our PLC launch and other important instructional priorities.
Well, thank you, Corey, and welcome Rockford Public Schools to the 2021 school year. It gives great pleasure to talk with you about some of our instructional focus areas and how we will work together and really capitalize on the power of us this year. First of all, I'd like to mention that, last year during 1920, we really built a very solid foundation of PLC readiness, specifically with establishing priority standards and protocols to really work together. This year we are going to officially launch our Rockford Public Schools Professional Learning Communities system with a focus on the culture of collaboration. We know that our engine is strong. We know that our want to is high. And when we think about the challenges that will be faced at the beginning of this school year, our culture of collaboration will be our vehicle for moving through. When we look back at last year and we think about the 3 big ideas of a PLC, we know that culture collaboration is where it begins. And so last year, we spent some time focusing on developing collective commitments, the very ones that you just saw. Also, we thought about embedding our 7 norms of collaboration as adult learners and interacting with each other. And we know that you, as classroom instructors, permeated those 7 norms of collaboration into your own classroom instruction. The foundation of this year's professional learning community launch will be built around the culture of collaboration. As we look at this slide, we can see the readiness protocols and information that we embedded during 1920 that makes us ready for this year. We have our collective commitments, our meeting time is scheduled. We will continue to build structure around the time that we meet so that we can yield results. We'll focus on question number 2, specifically assessment, and also how we can build an inquiry cycle that increases student learning because of the adults sitting around a table and talking about evidence and how instruction can be tailored to meet student needs. Also, when we think about how we will meet, I want to remind you of our new collaborative calendar. Each month will provide time for buildings and also grade levels and departments to focus on evidence of student learning and, frankly, at the beginning of the year, react to COVID-19 and the challenges that we may encounter. So we are pleased about our professional learning community's launch, but we also understand that we have to be agile in how we react as a district. Just like you do in the classroom, COVID-19 is going to dictate our priorities at the beginning of this year. And when it is time, we will build more of our professional learning community's layers. But now, the culture of collaboration is our vehicle to adapt and move through this beginning phase of the school year. I want to remind you and congratulate you, teachers, for the work that you did around identifying, aligning, and unpacking priority standards, and frankly, finishing during the spring of last year when we were in Rams Connect in a very challenging time. Tomorrow morning, I'll share with you more about how those priority standards have been published, but the takeaway now that I want you to hear is these priority standards will be the foundation of our curriculum as we begin the year. Our students have not been in face-to-face instruction since last spring, the middle of March, and we know that we must understand their understanding about the essential elements of each grade level or content area. If you have not yet, I'd like you to just also think about reading some of the publications that are out there related to our COVID-19 Return to Learn plan. Specifically, I would like to have an understanding in our district of our 3 types of instruction that will be provided. Outlined on the top half of this page are 3 types and their definitions. Number 1, Rockford Public Schools will offer face-to-face instruction. As you know, teacher facilitating among students in the same classroom. We will also offer remote learning in instances when face-to-face instruction is not possible due to a school closure. And then finally, for students who choose not to participate in face-to-face learning, Rockford Public Schools has arranged for Rockford Virtual to be launched this year. This arrangement is for families that are not enrolled in face-to-face instruction, and their students will be led by Rockford Public Schools teachers through learning opportunities for 1 trimester at a time. As an update for Rockford Virtual, about 7 to 8% of our community's families have chosen this option this year. This shows us a couple things. Number 1, a very high regard and want to for your classroom-led face-to-face instruction. And number 2, an emerging landscape that we must adapt to and show agility for around our educational offerings related to COVID-19. We will continue to keep you updated about Rockford Virtual throughout the year. When we think about all of the work that has been done at the elementary level or through the RTI process, we know that this was scheduled to get an upgrade, right, or a remodification for the upcoming year. I want to let you know that that is still the plan. We will take some smaller steps to begin with our RTI process update at the beginning of the year. And as our year continues to evolve, we understand where the consistency lies, we will embed more of our RTI updating process led by Sharon Wells, District Director of Literacy. Finally, I'd like to just call a little bit of attention to today and tomorrow. First of all, today you'll be spending time in your buildings and working with your teams around specific COVID-19 procedures and start of the year information. If you're a teacher in the afternoon today, you will also spend some time around some remote learning preparation led by your building principal or supervisor, and then later in the afternoon spend some time specifically looking at some of the individual tasks for your readiness. Tomorrow will be spent with grade levels and departments, and we will be looking at how we can prepare with some professional development around remote learning tools. The afternoon will specifically be spent for teachers around classroom lesson planning with your grade level and department, and if your role is different than that, around how COVID-19 will how you will respond to COVID-19 in your specific responsibilities. Finally, I'd like to call some attention to some of the evidence of planning that is represented on our district website. Throughout the summer, a large team of people worked collaboratively to develop our continuity of learning plan. Those are our 3 types of instruction, as well as our health and safety protocols to respond to COVID-19 in our schools. If you would like some additional details past what we will provide you here today and will be provided at your building, there are 2 documents that I would like to connect you with. The first one is our comprehensive plan that is on our district's website. It's under Return to Learn, Comprehensive COVID-19 Preparedness Plan. And the second is this summary page, which is 2-sided and includes instructional and then health and safety protocols. And then again, we'll ask you to reference some of these details, especially as we start to think about our re-transition into our face-to-face learning on September 14th.
Hello everybody, I'm Mike Cuneo, Assistant Superintendent of Finance for Rockford Schools, and appreciate you taking the time to be here today, and welcome back. So I just want to give you a general overview of some of the operational things that we've been doing this summer. I'm not going to get into finance. Issues that we're dealing with out there are very fluid at this point in time, and we could get into a lot of discussion that would go nowhere. But to focus on some of the tangible things that we've done this summer are as follows. Our maintenance and custodial staff have done an incredible job of getting the classrooms ready and operational for the start of the school year. So many thanks to the work that they're doing. We're also looking at adding additional resources to the custodial staff to help with some of the additional protocols that we're going to be looking at this fall when students come in. Our mechanics at our bus garage have been doing an incredible job at getting the buses ready. They're installing in every one of the buses a hand sanitizer dispenser, and also pre-numbering all the bus seats so that we can have assigned seating in those particular buses. That allows us to better comply with the different protocols that are there. And also a shout out to the transportation staff, the scheduling staff. Because of the different things that are being required, they were doing an incredible job of making sure that we get the right kids at the right stops on the correct buses. So really appreciate all the work that they're doing. I don't know if you realize this, but we've had a small contingency of food service staff that has been in the district all summer, serving on average about 4,000 meals per week to those community members in need. And they're also in the process of looking at different ways to administer meals once the students arrive in the fall, because there will be different protocols that we'll have to follow in order to maintain what's legal. Also, I have to give a shout out for operational and instructional technology. You know, it's a pretty large job that they have to do with the staff size that they have, and with 8,000 students and 1,000 employees that demand their attention. They've been doing an incredible job of getting the technology together, the one-to-one device initiatives, the devices working, deployed, and ultimately working out some of the kinks that will invariably happen as you deploy these things on a year-to-year basis. So many thanks to the work that they are doing. We have over the summer purchased thousands of masks, thousands of face shields, thousands of gloves, purchasing signs, cleaning supplies, all of which will go into the classroom and the buildings for cleaning. We're developing right now what's called a teacher toolkit, which will house a standard supply of these supplies and have a list that outlines what's actually in this box. As these things are depleted The idea is that you would work with maintenance to get those refilled, but ultimately we want to have one spot for where any teacher in any classroom can go to make sure that there's enough supplies, PPE supplies needed for the students and the staff. We want to make sure we maintain the safety of that particular room. You know, these are very trying times, and a lot of times during situations like this, I pull wisdoms from my father. Just a little word about my father. He's 94 years old. He grew up during the Depression, fought in World War II, raised 6 kids, so he has a lot of knowledge of what life experience knowledge that goes on that has gone on over his lifetime. And we talked about some different situations here as it applies to Rockford schools. And he said, you know what, Mike? He says, your district's going to be fine. He says, you're going to be okay. He says, one of the things that you need to do is you need to celebrate the little things in life, the simple victories that you have. And you need to look for a silver lining where needed. So, and he goes, I got a story for you. And before I get into this story, you have to know a little bit about my father. He's a gentleman who enjoys people. He is also a gentleman who enjoys a happy hour cocktail every once in a while. He's in great health. He walks every day. But quite frankly, he is alone now because my mother had passed away towards the end of December. So it really affected him when the shutdown in the early part of the pandemic, when there was a shutdown of the restaurants and the establishments, because he drew his strength from people. But anyway, what he would do is he would still get carry out at some of these different establishments. And so the one day he went in to this place and he says, Mike, you wouldn't believe this. He goes, I go in and they gave me my meal to go and they asked, is there anything else that you need? And he said, how about a drink? And the gentleman goes, well, what do you want? He goes, well, I'd like to have a rum and Coke. So the gentleman went behind the bar. He got out a styrofoam cup. He filled it with ice, he filled it with rum, he filled it with Coke, he put a cover on it, slid it across the bar and said, if you get caught with this, you didn't get it from here. He goes, Mike, I was so happy, I felt like a young kid during Prohibition. He goes, so the point he was trying to make is look, we have to celebrate those small things in life, okay? And we, as a staff, have to look at that as well to get us through. Whether it's the energy of the kids, the support of the staff, of the peers around us, ultimately we're going to do whatever we can to help to make sure you feel supported. And with the work that you do, the influence that you have on these kids is very important. And we're going to try to make that as easy as possible for you. Thank you for all that you do.
As a staff member, you've had an opportunity to look at the document that Mike had shown on the board, that summary document. And if you haven't, we suggest that you do look at that because it contains important procedures and protocols about how Rockford Public Schools is going to be responding to COVID over the course of the 2021 school year. We also want to alert you to the guiding principles that we used as a district when we were making these plans. So you can find those on the screen here. We want you to know that we are going to the best of our ability implement all of the required and strongly recommended protocols that the governor's plan has outlined for us. In addition to the summary document, which outlines some of the basic protocols, procedures, and routines that Rockford Public Schools has around COVID-19, we also have some guiding principles that we want to alert our staff to as we continue to monitor and really implement these procedures and routines. So one of them is that Rockford Public Schools strives to the best of our ability to react to any of the required and strongly recommended protocols that are outlined in the governor's roadmap. Additionally, we would like to implement the recommended protocols, but our focus is on the required and strongly recommended protocols. We also will be providing you as a staff member with some clear guidelines and expectations in the form of procedures, graphics, and policies that will help you navigate COVID-19 and make good decisions for yourself in your professional workspace. We also want to make sure that you know that we are requiring the use of a cloth face covering for all staff and students, regardless of age. We will also use social distancing practicing to the best of our ability, although we know that we won't be able to ensure that there are 6 feet of distance between people in every instance. We will be having a COVID response team. There will be a member of that team present in your building to help manage COVID-related questions you may have, and also COVID-related illnesses and symptoms that may come up during the course of the school day. We are committed to ensuring a robust learning experience, like Mike Ram talked about before, which does include a virtual learning option and a phased-in instructional approach using remote and face-to-face instruction. We also will be working hard to inform and train you about these procedures and routines. Some of that is coming directly after this message, and then as this progresses in the 2021 school year, we will be able to provide you with additional details and additional professional development should the need arise. We also want you to know that we're going to utilize the FFCRA, the CARES Act, to assist in the management of isolation and quarantine for staff through December 31st, 2020. If you're in a position as a staff member that you need to self-isolate or quarantine because of COVID-19 exposure, we will work with you to ensure that we can access any leave time through the FFCRA that may be available to you. We also want to take some time to go over some of the procedures and routines that you might be most curious about, or maybe have some professional questions about. So one of them is going to be the staff guidelines. What to do if you feel like you might be positive for COVID-19, or maybe you have been exposed to someone who is a confirmed positive to COVID-19. So you can see up here is a graphic that will help you understand what would need to happen. So if you are a COVID positive or you are presumed positive based on your symptoms and you're awaiting a test result, then you will quarantine out of the classroom or workspace for 10 days, and you would have to have the following things happen during the course of that 10 days. Before you can come back to work, you would have to be fever-free for 72 hours without the aid of medication. You would have to have significant improvement in any COVID-related symptoms, and you would have had to have more than 10 days pass since your positive COVID test result. That is when you would be able to work with your principal or your supervisor to re-enter the workplace. That is an inclusive list, so it's not one of these things. It would be 10 days and all of those things would have happened. If you have been exposed to someone, and we have classified that through the Kent County Health Department as a high-risk contact or high-risk exposure, where you had been exposed to someone who had tested positive or been presumed positive for COVID-19, then these things would need to happen. You would have to quarantine for 14 days from the last occurrence of a contact with a positive case. And so during that pendency of time, you would be waiting to ensure that you don't develop symptoms. High-risk contact is defined by the Kent County Health Department as being in a room for more than 15 minutes with someone who is a confirmed case without social distancing and wearing a mask. It also is more than 2 hours in the same room, regardless of precautions or direct contact within a social distance circle. The other thing it would be any direct contact with a positive case, which includes things like shaking hands, hugs, or physical contact of any type. If those things happen during your workday or during your personal life, you would be then classified by the Kent County Health Department as having a high-risk contact, and that quarantine period would kick in. Again, we will need to follow the FFCRA to help access time for you so that we wouldn't have to immediately start into your sick time. We would access that for you should you be eligible. So if that happens to you over the course of the 2021 school year, your supervisor, your principal, and also my office will be able to assist you to make sure that we have you safe and those people that you work with and those students that you serve safe as well. You'll also notice that there'll be some signage in our buildings and in the entrances to our buildings that help us kind of guide through this situation. So when you approach one of our buildings, you will see a stop sign. It's illustrated for you on the screen, which says that if you have any of these symptoms, please do not enter our buildings. As a staff member, we're expecting you to screen yourself for these symptoms every day before work. Those symptoms are fever, shortness of breath, or any type of unexplained cough. If you have those symptoms, please do not come into our buildings and please do not come to work. If you have questions about that, Our COVID response team, under the direction of Scott Beckman and Kelly Thieker, will be happy to assist you. But again, we're hoping that our employees will be screening themselves daily and making good decisions for your health and safety and also the health and safety of other people. You also might be wondering what a face covering looks like at Rockford schools and what it doesn't look like. This is really important for us as staff people to be able to model what appropriate wearing of a face covering looks like. So when you're wearing a face covering at work, which will be all the time, that you're not eating or drinking or outside and socially distanced, then your face covering will need to cover your nose and mouth. The face covering should be secured behind your ears, and it should cover both your nose and mouth. You can adjust your face covering to ensure that it is adequate so that you aren't having particles come out of the face mask. So if your face mask is too loose, you may be asked to tighten your face mask. You should not wear your face mask below your nose, even if your glasses are fogging up. Face masks belong here, and we need to model this for our students so that we can ensure that our students are using face masks adequately to reduce the spread of COVID-19. If you have questions about face masks, your building principal or your supervisor will be able to help you navigate that successfully. However, they are required. A face shield is not sufficient for a face covering. It needs to be a cloth or a disposable surgical type face covering. Rockford Schools will be providing face coverings like this to all of our employees. You can choose to wear these if you would like. That is a resource for you to use. You're also welcome to wear a different face covering that you might provide yourself, or disposable or surgical face coverings that you provide for yourself. But again, that expectation for our employees is that we will all be wearing face masks anytime we are not outside adequately socially distanced and anytime students are present. If you're a staff member who's engaging in remote instruction from your workspace, when you are in your workspace with your door closed and alone, you do not need to wear a face covering. We also have a set of student guidelines for COVID, what to do if a student appears ill in your classroom or says that they don't feel well in your classroom, or if a student reports to you that someone in their close circle has a confirmed positive. You can see the graphic up on the screen. That graphic is a flow chart which will help you navigate what to do for students who are exhibiting or who are reporting some type of symptom or contact. The COVID response team in your building will be able to take that information, and then they will use it to work with the Kent County Health Department for any contact tracing. That wouldn't be something that we would ask our employees to do, but our COVID response team will be responsible for coordinating that with the Kent County Health Department. These and other guidelines are all going to be present in a COVID response book that you will receive virtually. And we expect you as employees to take a look at all of those procedures and routines and implement them to the best of your ability in your classroom or your workspace every day.
I'd like to also take a moment to highlight some classroom arrangement procedures in response to COVID-19. As a general rule, there's a lot of information out there that the district has established that will align with the Michigan Safe Schools roadmap, and all of that information will be available to classroom teachers and staff members so that you may apply it to your specific role. When it comes to the classroom setup guidelines, I just want to highlight a few pieces and also evidence some of the types of district guidelines that we have written for different types of roles or responsibilities. So first of all, when you think about your classroom setup, we know that our building footprint can't necessarily guarantee 6 feet between every student piece of furniture. So as a classroom teacher, we ask that you are going to apply some of these principles to your learning environment in an effort to maximize social distancing, but also realize that we have implemented other mitigation strategies like wearing a face mask, hand washing stations, also thinking about the fact that classrooms will be sanitized multiple times per day, even thinking about times when our plexiglass barriers will be implemented in the classroom. So I want to highlight just a couple of these guidelines and then ask you through your building principal or supervisor to review them at a later date as well. But again, there is information for you. and we have written it, and we do want to put you in a position of success throughout the beginning and all of the entire school year. So first of all, when you look at your classroom, we ask that you set up your furniture to maximize social distancing. We want to think about how we can have students facing in the same direction, realizing that our gradual release of responsibility instructional model really focuses on collaboration. We're trying to find, of course, the priority right now, which is to think about the health and safety as well as blending our instructional moves. And that is an interesting challenge, knowing how progressive and innovative we are becoming when it comes to instruction as a district. Also, we know that some of your classrooms have tables or different pieces of furniture. We ask that you evaluate the pieces of furniture in your class. You think about your class rosters, and then you consider how they can best be arranged. If there are pieces of furniture that require students to sit in a closer proximity to than what you would ask, like say tables where 2 students would sit at, then if their arrangement is not possible, we do have some instances of plexiglass that may contribute to some of the mitigation strategies for social distancing. Also, if you have pieces of furniture in your room that you might not use right now or might be considered to be removed to allow for the opening of some more space, we would ask you to consider doing that, specifically if they are even personal items or things that you could take home for a temporary time. Also, we know that all of our classroom furniture will be sanitized multiple times per day. So when you think about pieces of furniture or even belongings or artifacts that are in your classroom that may not be necessary and be difficult to sanitize, we consider you to do an audit of your classroom and perhaps only keep those essential items as we begin. Again, there are many details to consider when thinking about setting up your classroom, and we have some definite outlines, guidelines that we think can apply to every single situation. So we appreciate the fact that you are doing your best. We understand that 100% and want to support you during this time. And again, we will continue to adjust and be agile as we move through the school year. Thank you.
Well, good morning and welcome to this very different and challenging 2020-21 school year. First of all, I want to thank the 3 assistant superintendents, Corey, Mike, and Mike, who have presented. I want to make it really clear to everybody. I feel privileged to have the opportunity to work with these 3 leaders. They've just done an outstanding job in the time that I've worked with them. And 2 of them are, quite frankly, new to the job here in Rockford anyway. And it's been a privilege for me to work with them. I can state without a doubt that the Central Office Administration that I work with today is one of the best I've ever worked with in my entire career. And you should all have confidence in who they are and what they do and so forth to help you do a better job at what you do. And so I want to thank them for that as well. I want to make it clear, I am not going to sugarcoat anything, because there's no reason to sugarcoat anything, because this is a very challenging time, probably the most challenging time that any of us as school employees will ever face. I finished 52 years as an educator in Michigan last June. I'm starting July 1st, my 32nd year as superintendent in the Rockford Public Schools. Never have I faced the challenges that we're facing today. And we faced a lot of challenges here in Rockford over the last 31 years, but nothing compares to this. So it's really going to be important that all of us work together in dealing with what we are going to face and how we're going to educate children and how at the same time we're going to keep everybody safe. I want to begin by thanking our staff last March for stepping up to a very unpredictable last 4 months of school. You had literally, teachers and principals, less than a couple of days to put together an online program when the governor closed the state down as far as schools. That's people ought to be thanking you for what you did, because it was very unusual, to say the least. So you did a great job. And then as we progressed throughout the rest of the school year, it became evident that in fact we're going to continue the same means of teaching and learning into the 2020-21 school year. So at the end of May, all the way up through today, our people, I'm talking about our principals, our central office administration, our teachers, our support staff, have been working hard to put together a return to learn program that I'm telling you right now, and I've seen a lot of other programs out there, is second to none. It's very comprehensive, and it is put together in a way that we, if followed the way we need it to be followed, will provide a safe environment for students and staff. And that has been our priority. Now think about this. In Rockford Public Schools, we're asked to put together a program for 8,000 kids and 1,000 employees, plus their parents, plus the community as a whole. And we are certainly not going to please everybody. We're not going to please anybody, probably. And the fact that whatever decision we make is going to be criticized by a group of people. And then if we choose a different approach, those people will like it, but the others won't. So quite frankly, what we've decided to do, and what certainly I have decided to do, was that we are going to be consistent in what we do. And we're going to put safety before anything else. But I also want you to know that we're going to follow what the governor says. And we're going to follow what medical health officials say, the experts in the field. And that's what we've been following, and that's what we'll continue to follow. And I know it's not going to make everybody happy. I know that. But as long as we are working hard to keep people safe, and as long as we're working hard to provide an instructional program that at least meets the needs of our students over the next school year, then I feel we're doing our job. Now, what is that plan? Well, you know, to start with, the plan is this. We're going to provide students and teachers in the classroom teaching and learning. And why are we doing that? Because number one, we feel we can make it as safe as possible. And number two, it's the best way to teach and the best way to learn. Students and teachers together in the classroom. But we also know that's not for everybody. And so our option for parents in particular will be a virtual online learning called Rockford Virtual. And that is going to, as Mr. Ram mentioned earlier, to meet the needs of around 7-8% of our student population. And we need to provide that option for students and parents. But you know what? We digressed just a little bit. And how did we digress? Well, we said the first 12 days of school will be remote online. That is, teachers going into the classroom, teaching, live streaming their lessons to students who will be receiving that instruction online, presumably in their homes. Why are we making that decision, that digression for 12 days? Because quite frankly, we've been following what the health officials say and what the new incidences of COVID have been the month of July. And they've averaged over 700 new cases a day. Well, that was a concern, obviously. And so we looked at that and evaluated that. Plus, the governor extended the state of emergency through September 4th. Well, if we're going to be consistent, we're going to be consistent by listening to the experts and listening to the governor, who is receiving expert advice as well. And so that's why we said for the first 12 days of school, we're going remote online, teachers in the classroom, students receiving instruction at home through their devices. But come September 14th, assuming we are still in phase 4, students will come to the schools in the classrooms receiving instruction from you. And those 7 or 8% people will continue to receive instruction through Rockford Virtual. That, I believe, will at least meet the needs of most of our people. Now, you know, it's amazing. I have listened to every news report you can think of ever since March up until now. I've listened to the health professionals, the doctors, the nurses, and there are 3 things that have been consistent through what they've said. That doesn't sound very comforting, and I get it under a pandemic, but quite frankly, there are 3 things that I trust. The first one is people wearing masks. I look at it this way. I wear a mask to protect you, and you wear a mask to protect me. And you can take that analogy all the way into the classrooms and working with students and teachers and with people you interact with. I wear a mask to protect you, you wear a mask to protect me, and we're requiring masks. And there will be cases where people can't wear them because a doctor has given a medical advice saying that for health reasons they can't wear them, and we'll have to adjust to that. But it has to be a doctor that gives that advice, and they have a specific form they'll need to fill out. Number 2, washing hands. Consistently I've heard that. Well, we're going to have large 5-gallon containers of hand sanitizers in your classrooms, on the school buses, wherever people gather, so that you'll be able to, and students will be able to, wash their hands as often as you want them to do so, and as often as they need to do so. The third was the social distancing. And as Mr. Ram mentioned, that's going to be pretty difficult to do in a lot of cases because of the footprint of our classroom and so forth. But I am confident that our teachers can set up their classroom environment that will provide as much social distancing as humanly possible, as well as we'll provide those plexiglass type dividers in classrooms, not one for every student, but enough in order to provide special cases to be addressed. We will continue to seek your advice throughout this school year. You're the ones that are working with students directly in your classrooms, assuming we're in phase 4. And we will need your advice on how we can do things better. And it's got to be number 1 priorities. We got to communicate with each other, not attack each other. We have to communicate with each other in a proactive way as we learn to work through this process. Because I tell you what, since March, even the medical professionals and those people in the field of health have disagreed and have changed course in certain approaches, techniques, protocol, and so forth. So we can learn because we're right now, you in the classroom, you out as support staff are directly involved with people, and we're going to be listening to you and taking your advice, and as we need to make adjustments, we will. Now you all know that the governor and the state legislature came up with an agreement on a particular way to operate and implement opening of school. A lot of things they put in there I just can't agree with. I think it was more political decision than it was what's in the best interest of people. There's going to be a lot of dotting the I's and crossing the T's that we're going to have to do. And quite frankly, I'm not sure how we're going to do all that. And we have to hire additional people to make that happen. But the bottom line is there's some issues that we're going to have to deal with that are going to take a lot of time and could become exasperating. But we're going to do them because they've become part of the law, and we're going to follow the law. One last thing in closing, I know I always talk about my family. A lot of teachers in the district have had all 3 of my daughters. Of course, they're all adults now. So I've had 3 daughters, and 2 of them gave me granddaughters, plus the fact I've had all of my dogs have been female. So quite frankly, I guess I've one male in a household of females. Well, my daughter, Holly, last May 15th, she gave birth to a baby boy. She and Jeremy Jones have a baby boy, Leroy Michael Jones. And I'm ecstatic about this opportunity and so forth. And it's going to be exciting to watch my two granddaughters grow and so forth and become young ladies, but my grandson to become a young man. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So that's a positive, right? In fact, everything we're going to be talking about can be a positive as long as we work together as the Rockford Public Schools, that we have a tradition of excellence, and we're going to continue to promote that excellence even under very challenging and difficult environments. I wish you all the very best, and we will work together to make things happen in a collaborative way. Thank you. We believe in the power of us. That's all of us. Rockford Public Schools staff, we wish you the very best in the 2020-21 school year.